Welcome to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher, where we take you behind the scenes with peak performers to learn what makes them tick and discover how you can apply their lessons to your life. I'm your host, Molly Fletcher. Michael Hyatt helps overwhelmed high achievers win at work, succeed in life, and lead with confidence. He's the best-selling author of books like Your Best Year Ever, Living Forward, and Platform. In his new book, Free to Focus, Michael shares his personal productivity framework to help us achieve more by doing less. In today's conversation, we talk about redefining productivity and how to free up our schedules for the people and projects that matter most. I've been using Michael's full focus planner over the last year, and it's been a game changer for me when it comes to staying organized and focused on what matters most. So let's jump right in. Here's my conversation with Michael Hyatt. Well, Michael Hyatt, what a treat it is to have you on. You have changed and continue to change so many lives in incredible ways. So thanks for taking a minute.
Thank you, Molly. I appreciate being on.
It's a pleasure. Well, so tell me this, how have your views on productivity evolved over the years?
Well, I kind of consider myself a productivity geek. I've always been fascinated with this. I mean, going all the way back to college before there were personal computers, I was the guy with the planner who had my week laid out in advance, even in college. But I would say that initially, for many years, actually a couple decades, I thought productivity was about getting more stuff done. And then, I thought if I could just get, productive, I could get a whole lot of stuff done. And if I could get more stuff done than my peers, that I could compete and it would give me an edge and then I would be more successful. So then productivity sort of evolved from, being a way to be more efficient to being a way that I could be more successful. And then I think in the last decade, what I've come to realize is that productivity is not about getting more stuff done. It's about getting the right stuff done. And if you can do that, you can be productive and you can build the kind of life you want.
And so how do you figure out what the right stuff is?
Well, there's a lot of different ways to get at that, but not all things are created equal. In fact, one of my critiques of sort of the current default productivity system out there, there's a system called Getting Things Done. And there was a great book that was written by David Allen called Getting Things Done. And it's great. I mean, I've used that methodology, sometimes referred to as GTD methodology, but it doesn't have a filter. So if something, comes through your inbox or through a social media channel or arrives in the mail or pops into your head, based on the Getting Things Done methodology, it has to be put on a list. So it's not uncommon for me to meet people, entrepreneurs, business owners, leaders, et cetera, that will have hundreds and hundreds of things on lists. And the problem is they wake up feeling, dreading the day because there's more to do than possibly get done. And they go to bed at night, even if they accomplished a dozen things, feeling like they failed because there's still hundreds of items on their to-do list. So I think there's got to be a filter. And one of the things that I talk about in my new book, Free to Focus, is something we call the Freedom Compass. And this ensures that you get the right things on your to-do list and you find another way to take care of the things that shouldn't be there at all. So you want me to just talk about the Freedom Compass for just a minute?
Absolutely, yes. You're out ahead of my questions, Michael, but I'm not surprised. Go for it. That'd be awesome.
Sorry about that.
I love it.
Okay, so the Freedom Compass, imagine a traditional compass that has north and south. So let's start with south. Okay, this is the opposite. You want to go true north, but the opposite is where there's no passion and there's no proficiency. In other words, you don't like doing this task and you're not very good at it. So for me, and it's different for everybody, thankfully, for me, this would be things like managing my email inbox, calendar management, booking my own travel. Those are in what I call, this is one of the 4 zones, the drudgery zone. So it's just something that we dread, we hate. Due north, the exact opposite of that, where passion and proficiency meet, things that we love to do and things that we're really good at That's the desire zone. And that's when we're there, we feel a sense of freedom. We feel like, we would be doing this even if people didn't pay us. And so there's two other zones. There's one called the disinterest zone, where you're good at something, but it kind of bores you. That's where you have no passion, but you're good at it. And then there's something that I call the distraction zone, which is the opposite of that, which is where you like doing it, you're just not very good at it. And generally speaking, particularly in business, it's a waste of your time. So we want to focus on the desire zone. That's where passion and proficiency meet. That's where you're going to move the needle the most on your business and on your life. If you can filter items that don't really appear in your desire zone, and they could be handled by somebody else, they could be eliminated, they might be able to be automated. But the key to real success, I think, and the key to true productivity is to focus on the desire zone activities where you get the most leverage for the least amount of effort.
And so these are things that are essentially, maybe is one way to think about it, that only you can do?
Yes. Yeah, definitely. And I think for everybody, it's going to be different. And just to illustrate it, so for me, there's only three things that I love to do and I do well. And so I try to stay in my lane. Mm-hmm. And in my business, if I get outside of my lane, I gunk things up. So for me, that's I'm either creating content, I'm delivering content, which is like what I'm doing now, or I'm creating vision for my team. Now, here's what's interesting. So I already admitted I don't like email management. I don't like calendar management. I don't like booking my own travel. Jim, who's my executive assistant, he loves that stuff. So that stuff, which is in my drudgery zone, is in Jim's desire zone. So he's uniquely gifted and qualified. And this is what makes the world go around. So the key is to populate your business or your organization with people that have complementary desire zones.
Absolutely. And in the book, which thank you for sending me a early copy.
You're welcome.
You talk about stop, cut, and act. Can you talk to our listeners a little bit about that so that they can get inside of the process that you deploy in addition to sort of these four zones?
So this is kind of the three grand movements, and it's something that I use on a micro scale whenever I get stuck, but we use it on a macro scale to explain the book. So normally when you think about productivity, the first thing you think about is go. Let's get moving. Let's take action.
Sure.
But I say, no, you first have to stop. And you have to stop and you have to do three things. You first of all have to formulate. And by formulate, I mean, what's your productivity vision? Productivity is not an end in itself. It's a means to an end. And if it's not a means to greater freedom, if it's not a means to getting the life you want, then it probably isn't going to serve you well. So getting clear on the vision, that's formulate. The second one is evaluate, and that's where I talk about the freedom compass. Let's figure out what you're uniquely good at, and let's focus there and stay in your lane. And then the third component, this is actually the third chapter in the book, is rejuvenate. And this is where I think so many people miss an essential ingredient of productivity, and that is you've got to be taking care of yourself. For example, one thing that will affect your productivity more than any other single factor is the amount of sleep you get. If you're not getting adequate sleep, you're going to be unfocused, you're going to be unproductive, you're going to find yourself reading the same paragraph over and over again and still not getting it. But the science proves this. So CUT is about formulate, evaluate, rejuvenate. Once we've done that, then it's time to move from the stop to move to the second part of that, and that's to move to where we really want to focus on cutting. So stop and then cut. Now you got this unwieldy to-do list. You got all this stuff you need to do something with. Mm-hmm. Now what are you going to do with it? And so I divide this up into three chapters too. So eliminate, flex your no muscle. Say no before this stuff ever gets on your to-do list. So that when you get an incoming request or see an interesting opportunity, you can say to yourself, wait a second, is this in my desire zone? Is this congruent with my goals this year?
Sure.
So eliminate.
Yeah.
Then automate. Subtract yourself from the equation. So what are the things that you have to do or need to be done, but they can be put on autopilot? And this includes, I think this is kind of unique, self-automation. And I talk about this through the lens of rituals. And I talk about 4 foundational rituals that everybody ought to have in their week that kind of puts a big part of your day on autopilot. Mm-hmm. And then delegate. Oh my gosh, this is the closest thing you can do to cloning yourself. And a lot of people resist it because they say, a lot of especially entrepreneurs and business owners, leaders, they'll say, well, if I want something done right, I have to do it myself. Or they say it takes more time to explain how to do it than just do it myself. Or I really can't afford to pay somebody. But they're missing the opportunity here because delegation is like the hidden hack that will scale your business faster than you could possibly imagine.
No question.
But it has to be done in a certain way, and I talk about it here. So that's stop and cut. So step 3 is act. And this is where you want to, first of all, consolidate. And by that, I mean, I teach a principle called your ideal week. In other words, what would your week look like if you had 100% control over your time? And I realize that not everybody does, but if you did have, what would it look like? Mm-hmm. And then you try to order all the events in your week so that they match up with the ideal week. It's not always going to happen. In fact, it may rarely happen, but at least you've got an intention and a fundamental design that underlies all your activity. Then I talk about in that same chapter about mega batching, just the incredible power of doing similar things together, like blocking entire days for certain kinds of things. That's chapter 7. Then chapter 8, second part of the same section on act, is designate, which is really about prioritizing your tasks, designing your day, designing your week, designing even your quarter, so that you can really achieve what you set out to do. And then the final chapter of the book, there's actually a conclusion, but before that is activate. How do you beat interruptions and distractions so that you can really focus on your highest leverage, most important work, and really be productive? That's where the rubber meets the road.
Well, and I got a little teaser into this, obviously with the, the pre-copy of the book, but also I am a full focus planner user, Michael.
Awesome.
And I love the tool. I am a huge fan of the way that it helps you think about everything from your ideal week to even your weekends. So if people haven't checked that out, I'm a huge fan of it. I think it's an incredibly powerful tool. And so to dig into this mega batching, tell me how people can deploy that in their lives. There's probably people listening going, yeah, Michael, it sounds amazing, but I've got emails flying in. People are walking into my office all day. How does that work? And what recommendation do you have for people on how to deploy that tool?
Boy, there's so much. And I think it does start with the ideal week. And I try to group similar activities together because when you get in a certain headspace, it's easier to stay there than to constantly be jumping from one context to another context. Let me give you an example. So my most important work, and this is unique to me, this won't be the same for everybody, but my most important work is when I'm working solo, working on creating content or on delivering content or on visioneering. So what that means is that meetings end up being an interruption in my flow. It's hard for me to do creative work when I'm constantly being interrupted or distracted. So what I've done in my ideal week, and this is a mega batching concept, I said, I'm going to have all my internal meetings, my meetings with my teammates, the people that report to me, all internal meetings happen on Monday. So once I get into that headspace, once I get into that rhythm, then I'm totally there. I'm interacting with people. I'm trying to give them direction. I'm listening to what their needs are, seeing how I can help, and so forth. When it comes to Tuesday for me is what I call a front stage day. So that's going to be a day, whenever possible, that I'm going to consolidate my front stage activities, like speaking, like doing interviews like this. And I just got off of an interview, and I've got another interview that I'm going to after I talk with you, Molly, but I got my head in that space. Mm-hmm. Same thing on Wednesday's a front stage day for me. Thursday's a front stage day for me. I do some backstage work on Friday. Actually, most of the day is devoted to backstage. And then on Saturday and Sunday is where I go off stage. And that's time for my family. That's time for my friends. That's time for self-care. That make sense?
100%. And I'm a huge fan of that concept. And you really protect your time and yourself. And I loved the interview that you did with Lewis, where you talked about on a plane, and maybe you can share that story, and you get an email when you're the head of an enormous publishing company, and you get an email that you need to turn around, basically, and go back. And you and your wife had sort of been looking for this time away, and you took a deep breath. But tell that story, because I am a huge proponent of if you don't take care of yourself, you cannot serve other people.
It's so true.
Tell our listeners that story, Michael. It's a great one.
The story really illustrates the thing that all of us experience the first time we step on an airplane, and the flight attendant comes out and says, in the unlikely event that the cabin loses pressure. First, put on your own oxygen mask before you attempt to help anybody else. And so that's kind of the self-care principle, that we're not going to be helpful to anybody else if we're not taking care of ourselves. So this was in the middle of the recession. It was about early 2010. And I had not taken a vacation for several months. And we were in just the grind, trying to survive in the middle of that economic downturn. We had laid off like about 120 people in our company out of 650 in the first year of the recession. And it was hand-to-hand combat just to survive. Our whole industry, the whole publishing industry was hit by the recession and also by the digitization of content. So I finally took a vacation, and I had it planned, and I had told the board about it. They said, fine, go ahead, you deserve it, take it. My wife and I were going to Colorado, and we had a layover in Dallas. So as we were taxiing to the gate there in Dallas, I got a message from the chairman of my board, and he said, I really need you to turn around. He said, we're going to be in Nashville, where I live and where the company was. We're going to be in Nashville on Monday. And he said, we really need to meet with you to discuss some of the things related to this new initiative that you're doing. And I mean, my heart sank because my wife had looked forward to this. I had looked forward to it. I was on the edge of burnout. I had to have this time. And so I looked at her and I said, honey, what do you think? I had her read it. And she said, thankfully, I have a very supportive spouse. She said, you know what? You do whatever you think we need to do. I'm happy to turn around and go back to Nashville. Or if you don't want to, I'll support you. And of course, I had that fear that, if I could be fired here. If I resisted this,
Sure.
They might just decide, they'd find another CEO. I emailed him back and I said, you know what? I understand. I said, I'm going to set this up with our CFO. You'll have everything you need when you be there on Monday. But as we discussed before, I need this. I'm going to take it, and I'll check in with you when I get back. And I literally didn't check my email again for a week.
Wow.
Now, when I came back, I went into my CFO's office because, by this time, I'm kind of nervous. What transpired while I was gone? I said, did the board come in last Monday? And he said, yeah, they did. And I said, what was it about? And he just laughed, and he said, it was a total waste of our time. He said the whole thing could have been handled over email or at best a conference call. It was nothing. He said, you made the right decision. And I was so glad that I did.
Before we go back to today's conversation, I want to invite you to check out our new Game Changer negotiation workshops. Do failed negotiations result in a loss of profitability for you or your organization? Does your team lose deals simply because of a lack of experience? Would you benefit from simply accelerating the deal process? Then our Game Changer negotiation workshops are something you're going to want to check out. I negotiated deals for some of the top athletes and coaches in the world for nearly 2 decades. And what I learned is that negotiation is simply a conversation. Yes, it's a tough one, a strategic one, but it's a conversation. And if you have the right tools and the right framework, anyone can become an effective negotiator. That's why I'm bringing Game Changer negotiation training to you. Visit GameChanger360.com for more. So back to sort of the Free to Focus book, which I think is such a powerful book. You talk about so many wonderful things, but one of the things that came up for me is email is such a productivity drainer, right? For a lot of people, right? It pops in your inbox and we try to react. And so how do we make sure in life that it's not managing us, that we're managing it?
Yeah, boy, it can be a huge time suck, and it is a huge time suck for most people. Some of the studies I quote in the book say that American workers will often spend as much as 6 hours a day on email. I mean, you could look very busy and at the end of the day look back and go, what did I accomplish? I mean, all I did was process my email. Your email inbox is basically a to-do list for the world, and they can all populate your to-do list. So I recommend 2 things. First of all, I would sequester or isolate the time you work on your inbox to a specific time every day. So I talk about it in the book, Free to Focus. I talk about 4 foundational rituals: a morning ritual, a workday startup ritual, a workday shutdown ritual, and an evening ritual. And these are rituals that basically set you up to win. What's the sequence of activities that you have to do to put yourself in the best possible position to win. So in my workday startup ritual, first thing when I come into the office in the morning, and in my workday shutdown ritual, those are the two times that I'm dealing with email. And for me, and I'll tell you how I'm able to do this, but for me, I'm able to process email in about 15 minutes in the morning and about 15 minutes in the afternoon. Now, that wasn't always the case, which leads me to number two. This won't work for somebody who doesn't have like an executive assistant or an administrative assistant or somebody else. But for those that do, and this is going to be a new idea for a lot of people, turn over your inbox to your assistant. Okay, this is crazy.
Yeah, wow.
And a lot of people are reluctant to do this, but here's what I do. I have two email accounts. So I have an email account that my assistant has, my family has, and my direct reports have. Everybody else gets what I call my public email address. So everybody, all these incoming messages, and I get probably 100 messages a day come into my public account. I never see that account. Jim, my assistant, processes all those email messages. When he gets to something that he doesn't know how to answer or he thinks requires my personal touch, he drags that into my personal email account. So for me, I'm only dealing with 5 to 10 email messages a day.
That is remarkable.
Well, it's a life changer, because what happens is I used to think nobody can handle these requests and all this stuff in the way that I would do it. I
Answer these questions.
Yeah. And what I found out is through the miracle, again, this is something else I talk about in the book, Free to Focus, through the miracle of email templates, Jim can actually respond in exactly the way that I would respond, and oftentimes even better than I would respond. Now, I want to say, he doesn't respond as me. So we're not deceiving anybody that this is me responding. He always responds as himself from my account, but then he'll drag it into if he needs my response or needs my consideration, then he drags it into my private account. The other thing is our entire team uses an email program called Spark, S-P-A-R-K. Spark. I have no affiliation with the company, but it is phenomenal. It has built-in email templates. And get this, Molly, you're going to love this. We can comment about an email message. You can invite any other team members into that message. You can comment on it. You can get questions answered. You can add information. Then you can reply to the person, and they never see the comment stream. They only see the reply.
And is that how you all communicate internally using Spark? I mean, that is the entire system?
No.
Okay.
No, we use Spark for all external communication.
Okay.
Vendors, customers, clients.
Yep.
Internally, we use Slack.
Okay.
Are you familiar with that?
I have heard of it, but I don't use it. No. But tell me about it. I mean, maybe I need to.
Slack will change your life.
Okay.
Because here's the problem with internal communication with email. You go through all these back and forth, and you got these long email chains, and then you suddenly decide that somebody else in your team needs to be brought in. How do you catch them up? You forward to them the entire thread with all the messages. Maybe you don't want them to see all the messages. Well, Slack gives you total control over that. So it's like text messaging in the sense that the responses can be instantaneous, but they don't have to be. But then they're divided up by channels. The conversations are divided up by channels. So, for example, in our company, we have it divided up by our major brands, major initiatives. And so when we want to invite somebody into that channel, they can go back as far as they want and see the conversation. Or we can invite them in and say, we want you to see it from this point forward, but we don't want you to see everything that's transpired up till this point. Got it. You can upload files into it, file management you can do within it, but it's amazing product.
It sounds remarkable. We need to check it out. It's interesting because you're talking about technology and you're talking about obviously efficiency as it relates to technology. But for our listeners, the Full Focus Planner, which I'm a fan of and have no intent to promote it, Michael, obviously, as you know, but just because I love it and I find it remarkably useful. There's so much productivity apps out there that are apps that are technology sort of centric. But yours is a physical, notebook that I use and that others use. Tell me your thinking around that, making it a physical versus an app.
Well, one thing I noticed with our clients, because we were recommending digital task management tools. Some people use something like Todoist or Asana or OmniFocus or Nosby. There's a gazillion of them out there. And I'm a total geek. I love digital tools. But what I found was, and what my clients found, was that they were increasingly distracted by trying to manage all that in a digital context where, you can multitask easily, which all the science suggests that is a very, very bad idea if you want to be productive.
Yes.
What we discovered was that analog paper is actually better for a number of things. And again, we've got the science. I write about this at michaelhyatt.com. We've done podcasts on it. But all the science suggests that analog, actually writing, it increases your retention. It enables you to focus. It empowers your creativity in ways that digital tools don't. And so I use a hybrid system. I mean, I'm here talking to you, and I've got 3 monitors in front of me. So, I'm totally decked out on the technology.
Sure.
I get the latest, greatest iMac and all that. But my paper planner, my full focus planner, that's out of that blizzard of input and distraction so that I can stay focused, and for the planner, on my big 3 for the day. I've got 3 and only 3 things that must be done today, but they're high leverage things that are going to really advance my business or my personal life. And so I use a hybrid system using a full focus planner. I do use a digital calendar, but I transfer to my day my appointments for today, because I want to write those down so that I can, impress them upon my thinking as I begin to prepare for the day. As I wrote your name down and the interview, it helped me get my head around this interview so that I wasn't just showing up, seeing it on my digital calendar. So I would say paper is the new digital, and especially among millennials.
Because you connect with it more, which I couldn't agree with more, Michael. I mean, I travel with it. I travel a lot like you, and I travel with it, and I write things down. I think the ideal week is so cool. I took a photo of it and sent it to my administrative assistant to say, hey, just so you know, this is sort of what an ideal week looks like for me. And it helps her get in kind of my head and heart. So what is one habit or ritual that you personally have incorporated into your life that has made the greatest impact?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is establishing a morning routine. And I know this because you come from the world of sports, right?
Sure.
So the thing about most professional athletes, or really good athletes in probably any field, even among amateurs, is that they make use of rituals. They have a way of setting themselves up for game day, or setting themselves up if they're a golfer for that perfect drive or that perfect putt, or whatever it may be. There's a ritual that they go through that gets them into the right mindset, the right frame of mind, so that they increase the likelihood of being successful. And so we can do that as non-sports people too, in the world of business.
Sure.
Where you can say, okay, how can I set myself up mentally, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, physically? How can I set myself up so that I've got the best chance of success today? So that I bring to today my best energy, my best thinking, and all the rest. So a morning ritual does that for me. So there's certain listed activities that I go through every morning, certain reading that I do, spiritual practices that I do, working out. I went to the gym this morning and did a 1 hour strength training thing. I do that 3 days a week, and then cardio 3 days a week.
Nice.
So when I come back and when I hit the office at 9 a.m.,
yep, you're ready to go.
I'm ready to go.
Right. You've talked to a lot of incredibly successful people. Michael, what do you think is some of the things that you see as common traits for morning routines, morning rituals, even evening rituals that you see peak performers traditionally do that helps them optimize their days?
Yeah, well, I think the thing that makes a morning ritual work is you do the things that are important, but not necessarily urgent.
I like that.
So these are the things that are incredibly useful over time. And if they happened at any other time of the day, it'd be easy to blow it off. So like one of the reasons why I do exercise is nobody wakes up and says, hey, I think I'm going to have a heart attack in about a decade. How can I work my way toward that? No, they make these decisions, one decision a day. It's blowing off a workout here, workout there. For long, you become a couch potato, you get overweight, your system's not working like it was designed. And so the thing I love, and the thing I've seen most of the successful clients I have who are very energetic and very successful, they make sure that exercise happens in the morning when it's the least likely to be interrupted or blown off.
Yes.
So it's those kinds of activities, like my daily reading, stimulating myself in my thinking. I've got a great reading program called Leader Books. That's a book club for leaders. But what we recommend there is do that in the morning first thing, because if you're going to try to find time once the whistle blows or the gun goes off, you're probably not going to find time in the day unless you sequester that to a time that's dedicated to it.
As a person that wakes up every day and you work to optimize your life, so you show up as the best version of yourself, personally, professionally, spiritually, mentally, physically. How do you manage your energy, Michael? I mean, you scaled your business incredibly quickly. You're impacting a ton of lives, which is awesome. How do you manage your energy effectively, in addition to sort of some of the tools and that we've talked about?
Well, thank you for asking that, because I honestly think that this is such an easy thing to underestimate. And I would say that the worst assumption that leaders can make is that energy is a given. And I would say that energy is caused. In other words, you're in control. And I can't remember who first said this, but the principle is valid, is you have a choice of either being the thermostat, setting the temperature, or the thermometer reading the temperature. So I think that energy is something that we have to cause and take control over. And for me, it's a function of, first of all, am I getting enough sleep? And let me tell you something. Most people don't, especially most Americans don't. On average, they get about 6.8 hours of sleep. And all the research shows that we need from 7 to 10 hours of sleep. Elite athletes get tons of sleep. It makes a difference in their performance, on the field.
No question.
And so sleep, nutrition, garbage in, garbage out. What we take into our mouths, there's certain foods that deplete our energy. There are certain foods that give energy. I talk about all those in Free to Focus in the 3rd chapter on Rejuvenate.
You do, yeah.
In addition to that, just the friendships, that we enjoy, our family relationships, those can give to us energy too. And by the way, conversely, we all know and have had probably in our lives emotional and energy vampires, people that suck the energy out of it. It may take rearranging some friendships, but those are some of the ways I manage energy.
Well, and I think it's actually more important to almost manage our energy, or equally as important to manage our energy over our time.
Yeah.
Because it's not about just showing up, it's about how we show up. You've scaled your business pretty quickly, and how do you keep your mission at its core? And how have you managed the challenges that come with scaling and growth?
Well, I think it's really important that people who are business owners or leaders have a written mission. So our mission at Michael Hyatt and Company is that we help overwhelmed, successful leaders get more focus so they can win at work and succeed at life. So very short, very succinct. And so you got to have a mission if you're going to keep it front and center for your team. The thing about mission, and it's true of vision, but they leak. In other words, you can keep filling the bucket by talking about mission, but it gets drained out. People forget. People get distracted. People go off mission. And I think one of the primary roles that we have as leaders is we've got to be the voice for the mission. Because if we're not the person who constantly calls attention to the mission, who calls attention to the vision, then people are going to start generating a lot of sideways energy. So I think it's critical that we do that. I remember in the middle of the recession when it was really hard to stay focused because there were so many demands upon us. And I remember a consultant said to me, she said, you've got to talk about the mission and the vision more. I said, I'm already talking about it. I'm sick of talking about it. And she said, you're really sick of talking about it? And I said, I'm sick of talking about it. She said, then you're half done.
And one of the things that you say is that one of the number one reasons that people don't achieve their goals is a lack of visibility.
Yes.
I think that is one of the coolest and most remarkable statements. And Michael, because of that, I actually have our mission and our vision and our goals, our annual goals, our quarterly goals on a whiteboard in my office.
Awesome.
So I see them every single day. And then, of course, they're in my full focus planner, which is powerful. So that is insightful. Michael, I heard you talk once about how important it is, you believe, to have a coach. And you are a coach for thousands and thousands of people. But I'm going to throw this at you. Do you have a coach?
Absolutely.
Okay. Yes, that's awesome.
So my coach is Dan Sullivan at Strategic Coach. Before that, it was Eileen Methine at Gap International. Before that, it was Daniel Harkavy at Building Champions. So I've had a coach for the last 20 years. I have a coaching program called Business Accelerator. And I tell people that are considering Business Accelerator, never trust a coach who doesn't have a coach. And the reason I say that is because don't try to sell me on coaching if you're not buying the product you're trying to sell. So every coach needs a coach. Absolutely.
I agree with you. And I think you were part of the reason that inspired me. I have a coach as well, and it's incredibly powerful. And the analogy is to my athletes is, every single one of them has coaches, obviously, and it makes them better. And it can make us better as business people too. So thank you for that guidance.
Can I tell you a funny story?
Please.
Yeah. So just a quick story. So the first time I hired a coach was back when I was at Thomas Nelson, and I was just a divisional manager at that point. And I went to my boss, who was the CEO. And I had just come off an incredibly productive year. I had turned this division around, but now it was like, I'm out of ideas. I don't know what to do next. So I decided to hire a coach, and I went to my boss because I wanted the company to fund it. And I said, I want to hire a coach. And he said, well, why would you hire a coach? He said, you're like our top performer. I said, the best athletes have coaches. I said, and at that time, Tiger Woods was the world's reigning golfer. And I said, Tiger Woods doesn't just have one coach. He's got 3 coaches.
Sure.
So I need a coach.
That's outstanding. And it helped you lift your business. They help you see things that maybe you don't see for yourself and set goals. It's powerful. So you started that journey long before you had started Michael Hyatt and Company.
Yes, back in the year 2000.
Wow. What are some of the things that you do personally, too, to continue to develop as a leader, Michael?
Well, I would say first and foremost, I'm reading. I consume a lot of books, and I've loved books. That's why I got into the publishing profession. And now, of course, there's so many opportunities to learn. In addition to books and audiobooks, we've got podcasts, which I consume a lot of podcast material as well. And I go to conferences when I can, usually a couple times a year. And so I devour content. I'm always looking for new ideas and new stimulation.
Mm-hmm. You're curious, and you're always
I'm
learning.
curious.
Yeah, that's cool. You've done an enormous amount of research, obviously, on goal setting. What would you say is the one mistake people make when it comes to setting goals? And what's sort of a tip for setting yourself up for success as it relates to goal setting?
Well, it's funny. You talked about visibility, but I see a lot of people develop goals and then don't look on them. They don't have a rhythm or a routine for looking at those goals. They lose visibility, and then out of sight, out of mind. I would say the biggest thing, though, and we've had over 35,000 people go through my course, Your Best Year Ever, and which, by the way, is a book, too, if people want to get the book, Your Best Year Ever. But I would say the number one thing is we've surveyed all those people. We said, what's the number one thing that derails you from accomplishing your goals? And the number one thing is is people that set goals set too many goals. And so our recommendation based on the science and taking 35,000 people through that course is that you need to have somewhere in the neighborhood of 7 to 10, no more than 10, 7 to 10 goals per year, and no more than 2 to 3 per quarter. So this doesn't mean you can't have other projects, and you will have other projects, but they don't rise to the level of a goal. And a goal, by definition, is something outside the scope of business as usual. So there's all this activity that you're doing to keep your business afloat, to keep, advancing against, your budgets and all the rest. But goals are like new initiatives, new things, and you don't really have the bandwidth. You may think you do, but my experience has proven, and thousands of my clients, is that you don't have the energy or the focus to focus on too many. And when you spread it over too many, then you decrease the likelihood of achieving anything significant or meaningful.
So people can pre-order Free to Focus now, right, Michael?
Yeah, it's on Amazon, and you can find out more. We've got some cool bonuses and stuff at freetofocusbook.com.
And they can find out more about you at michaelhyatt.com?
They can, yep.
Awesome. Okay, so Michael, we end with rapid fire. So I'm going to fire off some questions to you, and you just tell me what comes up, all right?
Okay.
Book that's had the greatest impact on you.
This is always tough because it tends to be a book that I read the last year. I mean, there will literally be hundreds in this category, but in the spirit of rapid fire, I would say Deep Work by Cal Newport.
Oh my gosh, I just finished reading it. It's an awesome book. And he endorsed Free to Focus too, which I saw, which was cool.
Yeah.
What's your favorite app?
I would say right now an app called Notion.
What is it?
It's kind of like a personal wiki. It does a lot of things that Evernote does, and it does a lot of things that Google Docs does, but it's really hard to explain. But kind of my whole team is fascinated with it right now.
Okay, cool. What's one habit that changed your life?
Reading the Bible every day.
A person you would most like to meet?
Winston Churchill.
Most memorable career moment so far?
Probably hitting the New York Times bestseller list for the first time.
Sure, that's special. What advice would you give your younger self?
You're not as smart as you think you are, but you have more potential than you could possibly imagine.
That's awesome. So, Michael, I am going to keep your number on speed dial because you have 5 daughters and I have 3, 15, 15, 16. You're ahead of me. So you're going to be my parenting coach. Sound good?
Sounds good.
Awesome. Michael, it is a pleasure to have you on. You change and impact so many lives, and Free to Focus is your newest. I know there's more inside of you, and this is the first of many conversations I hope we can have. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Molly. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks, as always, for listening to Game Changers with Molly Fletcher. If you like the show, be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts. There you can listen to previous episodes and leave us a review, which helps other people find out about the show. For more about me, visit mollyfletcher.com. Until next time, stay curious and be bold.